Welcome to a Monday edition of the First Things First podcast. I'm your host, Jenna Wolfe. Catch us Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern on FS1. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and tell us what you think. Leave us a review. Time to bring in Nick and the Hall of Famer, Cris Carter. We're going to start in Denver right now, where the Broncos hosted the Cowboys, and the Cowboys hosted a whole bunch of issues on offense. Ezekiel Elliott was basically a no-show, only gaining 8 yards on 9 carries. Dak Prescott came back down to earth, throwing for 238 yards with 2 picks. After it was all said and done, Prescott was quick to accept responsibility for the loss.
If I make more plays, we give ourselves a chance in that game, and I just simply didn't make the plays. There's no excuse for it. And playing like that, you won't win a game, doesn't matter who you play.
I do not think this is a picture of what our team is at all, and won't accept that.
All right, so Nick, I'll start with you. Is Dak Prescott good enough to win when Zeke Elliott struggles?
Of course he's good enough. We didn't have a precedent for this because this was Zeke's first bad game since the first game of he and Dak's career, week 1 of last season. Since then, Zeke has been nothing but productive. But yes, Dak is good enough to win without a running game. He wasn't yesterday. Yesterday he was bad. Yesterday they were playing an outstanding defense, a Broncos defense that sure looked like the Broncos defense that was good enough to get them to a couple of Super Bowls. But Dak has been nothing but excellent since he set foot in the NFL 19 games ago. And we keep doing this thing where we are so tied to the fact that Dak was not a high draft pick, that Connor Cook and Paxton Lynch and all these guys that are not, and Christian Hackenberg were taken in front of him, that we are looking for reasons. Our friend Troy Aikman during the game opined about whether or not, this is where the Cowboys missed Tony Romo. Dak Prescott is better than Tony Romo was. Dak Prescott is still, despite yesterday, in the midst of the best start to a career of any quarterback ever, and yet people are going to pin this loss on him because it was the first time we've seen him be bad in quite some time.
Quarterbacks of the National Football League, it's consistent. They get too much credit when the teams are going well and the offenses are moving or the teams are winning. And when everything else goes wrong, it's easy to blame the quarterback. So when things aren't well, then let's blame the quarterback. But I believe we can examine Dallas and stop trying to separate the success of Zeke and the success of Dak. They run hand in hand. Now, you said that Zeke had a bad game. Zeke didn't have a bad game. He didn't even have the chance to have a good game. The offensive line had a bad game. So the ability for the team to function, and that's what makes Dallas team offensively special, is that offensive line. If they're not doing their job, Zeke can't run the way he wants to, which also leaves the defense on the field that you can take advantage of their secondary, which I believe is subpar, which also, if their passing game, which wasn't, because they had 6, 7 guys in the box, their passing game was not dominant. So the question to me would be, wow, when they can't run the ball, can Dallas have a dominant passing game? And that, to me, is the biggest question about their offense. If you commit a bunch of people to the line of scrimmage, can they beat you? Can Witten, can Dez Bryant, can Cole Beasley, can these guys effectively, with Dak, beat you in the passing game? Now, going against Denver, Denver still has the advantage in the running game and the passing game because they have personnel not like most defenses have. So it's like a copycat league. Well, why won't other teams do what Denver did? They don't have 2 all-pro corners. They don't have a first-round draft pick that they use as their nickelback, Roby from Ohio State. He was on Dez one-on-one a bunch of times. So they have very, very unique personnel. Playing in Denver, as I told you guys all last week, would be a difficult task for Dallas. So you can place the blame all the way around. It's not on Dak. Can he carry it? This offensive line, they had a bad game, which didn't allow Zeke to be able to get off. He touches the ball the few number of times he did, not a run over 10 yards. Like, how are you going to win? So it's easy. Okay, let's look at Dak. but Witten's got to play better. Dez Bryant in one-on-one coverage, something we talked about all last week. If you're an elite player, you have to win those battles. You have to have a dominant game. When they target you, the number of times that they targeted Dez, you expect bigger results.
16 targets. 16 targets, and he got manhandled.
So let's spread the blame all the way around to Dallas, especially, and you got to start with that offensive line.
Nick, does Denver come in saying, hey, you know what? If we just attack the offensive line, if we just stop Ezekiel Elliott, if we just hold that run game back, we'll win this game. I mean, was that their plan all along?
It appears that was their plan, and that they trusted that those all-pro corners could win their matchups. There's not many teams in the league that can say, we're just going to trust both our corners, in some cases all three of our corners, that they're just going to be better than you. And the game got away from Dallas early. Zeke didn't just have a bad game. He had, I would guess, the worst football game of his life, not his professional career. Do you think Zeke, in his whole life, do you think he's ever had a game where he had more carries than yards?
Probably not.
9 carries for 8 yards. And Zeke compounded the error by giving up on a play when the game was still in the balance. And we can show it. On Dak's first interception, Zeke is the closest player to the ball. Watch this. And Zeke just stops, and they'll show it again from another angle. Zeke puts his hands on his hips, stops, and when he cuts back, when Chris Harris cuts back, that's where, watch Zeke here. Sees it, I'm done with this play. You can't do that. You can't do that. Forget all the controversy surrounding Ezekiel Elliott. You are one of the best athletes on the field. You are one of the youngest players on the field. As many interceptions do, this one cuts back the other way. If you're pursuing that play, one of your offensive linemen doesn't have to make that tackle. Maybe you can go and do the Maurice Claret from the Fiesta Bowl and force a fumble. You don't know what happens there. You can't give up on a play like that.
You can also get knocked out. Now, I played with the guy, Randy Moss, and there was a number of plays just like that where he would get criticized. And people are like, oh, he's not playing hard. Well, let's go back to Zeke when he came into the NFL. What was the scouting report? The scouting report was he's one of the best 3-down backs. He's even better without the ball than he is with the ball because he blocks, he picks up blitzes. That's his MO. So now we've watched him play a whole season and 2 games. And now we got one play out of those hundreds of plays that we've seen him play that we're going to say, okay, yeah, that happens all the time. It's just that we're pointing him out. I see this week in and week out.
And I've been
no, it doesn't make it, but it's part of the game. Also, when you chase a guy like that, you can also get blindsided because when they get an interception defensively, they are trying to hurt people. I.e. Warren Sapp, when he knocked the guy out for Green Bay. Like, we also are conditioned as players.
All those other guys on Dallas were just as susceptible to injury, and they all chased after the play. I'm not arguing that this undercuts who Zeke is as a player. I'm not arguing this defines him as a player. What I am saying is it's a bad look when you are personally having the worst game maybe of your life, certainly as a pro, and you compound it by giving up on a play when the game's still in the balance.
I've seen this happen too many times, and I just don't believe people are fair. It's not a matter, is it right or is it wrong? It happens. It happens in the NBA, happens in Major League Baseball, and it happens in the NFL. Yes, he gave up on the play, but also he didn't want to get hit, all right? Because if you chase a guy, them other 10 defenders, all right, there's one with the ball. Now you can be blocked. If you give yourself up, they won't block you. So is it a play that I encourage? No, but I see guys do it all the time, and it's called protect your career.
But if all of them did the same thing, he's got a free path to the end zone. If all of them had the same rationale.
Listen, it's part of the game. There's a bunch of bad plays. That did not cause Dallas to lose.
I know it didn't cause Dallas to lose. Let me just ask you this, because I know we're up against it. If you're in the film room, you're the veteran leader on the team, and you see that, what are you saying to Ezekiel Elliott?
I'm going to be very careful because I've seen too many guys get blindsided. I've seen too many guys get their ACL blown out chasing after people, all right? Be a pro, but also be smart, all right? You have to be smart.
I think there is a big gulf between being smart and where he was. I think he could have given more effort and still protected himself.
I'm just going to tell you something. When you see that ball intercepted, given the way the game was going, your state of mind right there could be, you know something, seen it bounce, I'm going to let that play go on. And that's exactly what he did. Now, is that a crime? No, it's not. No, it's not. But I've seen players do it all the time. It's not a matter of making excuses. This happens all the time. Say, do players take plays off? Absolutely, they take plays off.
Will he be spoken to about this? Will anyone say anything to him?
No. Okay. No, because it had nothing to do with the game.
Jason Garrett won't say anything to him. It's just they move on from something like this.
What's he going to tell him? Hey, Zeke, I want you to chase a guy from behind.
I want you to give up on the whistle blow.
No, he wasn't. No, he wasn't.
Chris, I know we're late, so maybe we can't show it right now, but when that interception happens, because the wide receiver's momentum's taking him the other way, he's the guy who has the best chance to make that play.
They had 60 plays offensively.
I get it. I know that play wasn't the biggest play of the game, but it was indicative of a bigger problem. This morning, everyone's going to be crushing Dak, because people are looking for reasons why Dak isn't great. And this morning, everyone's going to be saying, see, as soon as Zeke has a bad game, Dak turns into a pumpkin. And I'm trying to add a little context to that. But I know we're going to talk about this all day long. So. Continuing on First Things First, Daryl Johnston in studio with us. Last week, the sports world was discussing the downfall of Tom Brady. He was done. Remember, he was finished.
Right?
That didn't last long.
I'm not going to take this.
New England dominated the Saints 36-20. Brady threw for 3 touchdowns. He had over 400 yards. Gronk had 116 yards and a touchdown, but he left in the third quarter with a groin. Just like saying it sort of inside. Moose, you convinced the Patriots are back after blowing out New Orleans. And not back all the way, just back to the Patriots that we've been talking about in the last couple of years.
Well, a perfect setup, right? You guys made great points. You know, playing Thursday night, New Orleans has got to play Monday. Terrible defense over the last 4 or 5 years. So yeah, if you want to get healthy, you couldn't have put a better scenario up for him. Did you really count Tom Brady out last week?
I see these guys, they're misrepresenting.
He's done.
This is what I know. I didn't count him out. I never came out of my mouth.
Worst human ever, I think you said.
That was in the production meeting. You didn't actually say that on TV. But I like to bring the people behind the scenes.
Just tell me when the lies are over.
Okay.
All I did was I had the audacity to say we have, in this great 98-year history of this sport, we have no precedent for a quarterback starting a season as old as Brady is and being good that year. There's no precedent for it.
But we've never had a Brady before.
Okay, so that I agree with that. But so even if Brady breaks the mold, going 10-6 would be breaking the mold. Being the third guy selected to the Pro Bowl would be breaking the mold. Everyone went into the season saying that the Pats were the biggest favorite to win a Super Bowl since the Pats after the undefeated season. Like, they were overwhelming favorites in their conference and in the league. And before the Chiefs game, was pumping the brakes on it. Then the Chiefs game happens. I'm like, some questions here.
The Chiefs have been waiting for that game for 2 years. So I was not surprised at the outcome. I was surprised by Kareem Hunt, some of the things that we saw within that game. But that was a game that they'd had marked for a while. They wanted a shot from that playoff loss a couple of years ago that they felt they really let one get away from them. So that doesn't surprise me. And this organization, we saw it the last time. They said it was Kansas City who did this to them a couple of years ago.
Monday night.
So maybe that's just not their matchup. Maybe that's Dallas's Denver. Maybe they just don't match up well against them. But Tom is just, they win with Corey Dillon in a defense. They win with Randy on the outside and Wes in the slot. They win with double tight ends. They brought the double tight end. Whatever they have at their disposal, they will find a way to win. And even with all these guys hurt, I don't know if anything ever slows these guys down.
Right. I wouldn't be concerned about Tom. I'd be concerned about the timing between the wide receivers. They dressed only 3 guys yesterday for the game. Hogan got banged up in the game. How would they utilize the trade of Philip Dorsett coming over? He had a couple catches in the game, but another small guy, like where are you going to play him? You're going to play him in the slot? Who's going to play outside on a regular basis? Can they have a sustained running game to be able to help that defense and their linebacking core? If you get them in man-to-man coverage, you can take advantage of that. So there are things to worry about in New England, but I don't believe Tom Brady is part of that concern.
One of the big concerns they'll now have is Rob Gronkowski and what happens to him. And I think they thought that once he had all that time off and he was rested that he was going to come back full tilt. But now he leaves with a groin injury. And That's one of those nagging injuries, isn't it? I mean, do you ever come back full in the season from that, or is that going to be a week-to-week thing?
Well, most skilled guys, if you think about soft tissue injuries in the first month of the season, it's either one or two things. It's either a hamstring or a groin. And those things come with, you can't simulate running through tackles. You can't simulate your cleats being in the ground and people pulling at your legs. So you get a lot of these things early in the season. With Gronk, it's just a ticking time. Like, is he going to make it through the whole year? He's had a lot of injuries, but a groin I'm not necessarily concerned about. Anything to do with Gronk's arms, forearms, or back. Those are the things. He came into the league with a back problem. So those are the things I would worry about. I wouldn't worry about soft tissue, especially on a skilled guy early in the season. Agreed.
But, he is carrying a lot. So, and the thing with him, he's one of those guys, too, that it's not so much the production as it is the emotion, the intangibles that he brings. I just think they miss something when he's not in the lineup. And that's another void that they have to fill. And there's nobody with his personality on that team.
Well, and there was a couple interesting moments yesterday because records were broken, right? So Jason Witten got 1,100 and who did he pass in catches? It was Cris Carter. But he had 1,102 catches yesterday, so they show that list. They also then Antonio Gates.
He has 65 touchdowns, too.
Okay, all right.
That's half the number I have.
Okay, all right, chill.
But he's not counting.
No, I'm not the numbers guy. I'm sorry. But 130, 65.
Okay, exactly half. You're right. We know if you add Witten and Michael Irvin's career touchdowns together, they equal Cris Carter's. That's great. That's awesome. That's why you're in the Hall of Fame. But they also showed Antonio Gates. He tied for the career touchdowns Tony Gonzalez, or passed Tony Gonzalez. And one thing that I found interesting was how short of a list of tight ends with these monster numbers are, because that's a hard position to play at a super high level for a long time. We were talking during the break about Jay Novacek, who was with you guys during your guys' run, but that position, because when you do catch passes, it's usually over the middle and you're getting crushed. Blocking is hard on your body. You know that better than just about anyone in the world. It's hard for a lot of tight ends. The flame burns very bright, then burns out. I mean, dated reference, but Jeremy Shockey looked like, oh my God, he's going to change the position. And his career then was gone. Kellen Winslow Jr., oh my God. And then his career. So with Gronk, we have seen, what's the last year Gronk was fully healthy the whole year? Yeah. I can't remember. So that, to me, is a real concern. Whether or not Gronk, when you don't have Edelman anymore, whether or not Gronk can stay on the field and you can count on him to stay on the field.
And I think one of the things people don't realize with Gronk, he's one of the best end-of-the-line blockers in the NFL. Oh, yeah. Like, we know he's one of the best pass catchers. We know he's so reliable coming across that deep dig across the middle that him and Tom like so much. But his ability to give them a huge advantage in the running game when they don't have him in there, or his back is not stable, those are things that, as the season goes on, those are things in New England that you must continue to watch.
So, Moose, explain it to me, because I've asked the same question 4 different times, and I just don't know if I'm happy with the answer. How does a team with a 40-year-old quarterback, a very shaky defense right now, a tight end who's always questionable, Edelman's out for the year, Amendola's got his concussion, there's Hogan's, like a whole list of injuries, how does a team like that go on to win 12, 13 games and, who knows, maybe end up wherever they end up?
They all trust the process that Coach Belichick puts them through. He never deviates from it. So the consistency that he has, regardless of the situations or circumstances surrounding that team, is always the same. And we see one side of it from the media when you see the post-game press conferences and the very curt responses to the media.
Well,
but you talk to people that are inside, that they all buy into it. They all understand it. You wouldn't see people at the end of their career going to that place for an opportunity to win a Super Bowl if they didn't have the belief that every year they have a viable option to win this. Chris Long, Randy Moss. I mean, the list is long of the people that go there to get one shot, and they think that that's their best opportunity.
We continue with the NFC Championship rematch, Packers and Falcons, and once again, the Falcons jumped out to a huge lead and held on for the win. Can't blame Aaron Rodgers. He threw for 343 yards and 2 touchdowns. This is what he had to say after the game.
This is, potential matchup down the line. Hopefully, we put ourselves in that position. But, it's a tough game. They're a fantastic team, very well coached, MVP quarterback. But a game we're in it. I gave him a 7 on the fumble, gave him another 7 on the pick. We lose by 11, so.
Moose, was this just a bad game for the Green Bay Packers, or is this a sign that there are bigger problems on this team moving forward?
I just think it's a tough matchup with Atlanta in that dome. They're built a specific way. It was interesting. We talked to Ron Rivera a couple of years ago, and he doesn't like New Orleans in New Orleans, and he doesn't like Atlanta in Atlanta because Carolina's built to be outside on the grass. You look at Green Bay, I don't know if they're built like Carolina is, but when you go into those facilities, you go in against those types of teams that are built that way with speed, on the offense, on the defense, special teams, everything. So when Atlanta or New Orleans back in the day gets on that roll in that environment, in that setting, it is tough to stop them. And so that's why I think you see when Atlanta's moving and firing on all cylinders, they'll jump out on you 31-7 real quick. But I like what Aaron Rodgers did. He kept it all in perspective. You know, listen, hey, hopefully we're going to get a chance to see him again later in the season, which means playoffs. It's similar to what he did with the Relax a couple of years ago. He keeps everything in perspective. It's difficult to win a game on a Sunday afternoon in the NFL every week.
And he does what a lot of players and coaches want you to do in answering the questions. He didn't refer to any other players. He didn't pass the blame. He's like, man, I had 2 bad plays. If I don't make those plays, I mean, we lose by 11, we're in the game. So I do like the answer. The obvious thing was don't make excuses. When you start the game, and it's an NFC Championship rematch, your left tackle, he's inactive. Your right tackle is inactive. Now, we've struggled running the ball. Now, the thing you mentioned before, going into a place like Atlanta, Green Bay is not a real fast, athletic football team, all right? They play in Lambeau Field. The grass is a little higher, all right? So your characteristics for which you develop, they're a little bit different around your football team. Daniels, the nose tackle, he's out of the game. I mean, he wreaked havoc in the Seattle game. I think in watching Green Bay in week number 2, we still had one eye on week number 1 and watched and saw how good they looked against Seattle and how poorly they looked in week number 2. But I wasn't expecting a great effort, especially out of that offense with their 2 offensive linemen deactivated before the game.
I have a high level of concern for Green Bay, and maybe this is my own confirmation bias. It might be because this confirmed my worry about them headed into the season. The Packers won the Super Bowl in 2010. That was the last year they had a defense in the top 10 in either scoring or total yards. Every year since then, they have 0 years have they had a top 10 defense. Most years it's been a bottom 10 defense. And last year, what did we see in the NFC Championship game? The defense just couldn't match up with Atlanta. Week 1, I'm like, oh, I think Seattle's going to be pretty damn good. Mike Daniels and Green Bay, they really imposed their will. Maybe the defense now can be just good enough. Now, I know Mike Daniels didn't play in this game or got injured in this game. But this looked to me like the same old Packers defense, where the plan is, hey, Aaron, if you can score 35, we got it. If not, it's going to be a struggle. And that's so frustrating for me because the Packers, I believe, have the best player in football, one of the best, most talented quarterbacks I've ever seen. And it seems to me since the year after they won the Super Bowl, and they were 15-1, since then they've been complacent. They won't participate in free agency. Like, we can name the notable Green Bay free agents in the last decade off one hand. It's Julius Peppers. It's Martellus Bennett this year. Charles Woodson at one point. Like, I mean, that's the list. They don't go out and participate in free agency, and they just rely on Aaron Rodgers. And last night I saw a team that ran it back from the NFC Championship game and somehow was surprised with the results. In the NFC Championship game, you were down 31-7 early in the third quarter. Last night, you're down 31-7 early in the third quarter. I wonder why. Because it's the same 2 teams.
I think the other part is the offensive line. I think you make a great point with the tackles. When Green Bay has also struggled, and they don't participate in free agency. They haven't added any big defensive stars. They have always relied on the quarterback to win games, going back to Favre.
Yes.
I remember talking with Favre one time. He goes, there's so much pressure. I feel it. He had a season with a ton of interceptions. He goes, but every time I go out on the field, I feel like I have to have points. I have to get at least 3 because I know the defense is not going to be able to hold them. So that dynamic has been in Green Bay for a long time. But I think the other thing you have to look at, when that offensive line, when that starting 5 can stay together all season, they're also a different team. And to have both tackles out last night against Beasley, against that speed off the edge, that's a tough thing to walk into. They haven't been running the ball well. So I just think what we're talking about here, and this is my belief now, the way the CBA is set up and the way we do go through preseason, September is the new preseason. It takes 4 weeks to find out who you are in the NFL, and Green Bay's finding out who they are. Dallas is finding out who they are. New England's finding out who they are. We're not going to know until week 5, really, where the NFL sits in both conferences.
And also, was there an NFL team that had a tougher start than Seattle, home, and then going to Atlanta, opening up the new Mercedes-Benz?
No, that's a totally fair point. Now, maybe we'll look back, and if Seattle's not as good as we thought, we would adjust that. But when the schedule came out, no team looked at the first 2 weeks
and
were like,
that you're predicting will win their division.
Absolutely.
And you played them week 1 and week 2.
And so you guys mentioned that the Packers don't necessarily like playing in a dome.
Never have. Look at their record in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Right, but that would be a concern, right? When Dallas plays in a dome, Minnesota plays in a dome, Detroit plays in a dome, Atlanta plays in a dome.
But you play 8 games. You have to develop your team around where you're going to play your 8 games. Chicago has been this way for years, all right? They got that Kentucky bluegrass. It grows a little higher. It's for a slower field, all right? Green Bay is the same way. Minnesota has always had an undersized defense and a lot of speed. Dallas, they have a lot of speed on their defense. That's why their defensive coordinator does a great job at getting those guys to move around. So you have to have a team that's around your home field. Now, Green Bay, they've had a franchise for 20 years that's been circled around that quarterback. You guys make just enough plays, and we got a dude back here that can win us the game. That's what they did with 4, and that's what they're doing with 12.
The other thing you can do, though, to really kind of make it a successful season is to look around the league, look around your conference. Where do we need to get better? I always go back to Andy Reid when he was in Philadelphia early on, and it was the greatest show on turf. And for us to get where we have to go, we're going to have to beat the Rams. So that one year he comes out and he goes corner, corner, corner. First 3 draft picks. So, yeah, we're going to build our team around the 8 games that we play, but we've also got to keep an eye on who the big guys are in our conference and what do we need to do to beat that team. So I think maybe Green Bay needs to, all right, we got a great quarterback, we're doing this, but who are the big guys out there? And what do we have to do if we have to go on the road? That's why it's such a huge thing during the course of the season.
Yes.
Like if you have to go through Lambeau, if you have to go through some of these places, it's a completely different thing.
Well, on paper, they get to sort of take a little bit of a break next week hosting the Bengals.
Oh, so they do. They'll look good. They'll look good. Andy Dalton.
Should bet on them next week. Get a chance.
Chill.
Welcome back to First Things First. So yesterday, CC tweeted out this picture of him and Colin Kaepernick here in New York.
Oh, I thought Kaepernick was a homeless dude.
CC, tell us what happened here. How'd you run into him, and what'd you guys talk about?
We live in the same part of town. We both live in Tribeca. We've been missing each other. There's some people that were trying to get us to kind of meet up. And I saw him and approached him, talked with him, asked him about his interest in playing. I had to do the field test.
Show me the field test.
Because
you know,
people been saying Cap, oh, he needs to put back on some weight. Oh, he's getting too skinny. Oh, he's a vegan now, and all these other. Man, this is a football player. Now, I thought yesterday I was watching all the best players play, but there's no way that he shouldn't be on an NFL roster. He wants to play.
He told you he wants to play.
Absolutely. I mean, besides, hey, how you doing? That's the first question. Man, do you want to play some football? Because there's a lot of people out here advocating for him to play, and the worst thing would be for him, I don't know really what I want to do. No, he wants to play football. He believes he's got a gift to play football and believes that he can get a lot better as a quarterback. So it was nice to see him. It was nice to be able to see his state and talk to him and see his state of mind. And he's missing the game. All right, it's one thing in the summer, OTAs, it's one thing in training camp, but when you start seeing regular season and you start seeing people, Josh McCown, starting games in the NFL.
Brian Hoyer for his former team. They haven't scored a touchdown this year.
It starts to be a little more personal, and that's what I sensed in the conversation.
Did you get a sense, the reason many people feel he's not playing is for political reasons. Did you get a sense that maybe he's ready, he wants to put that behind him and just focus on football, or is it a package deal?
Well, he made that clear that he wasn't going to protest the national anthem. He made that clear 6 months ago. So that's not in question. Now the question is, the only thing they can argue is, does he fit into our system? Now, that's a good argument.
It'd be a better argument if Jacoby Brissett didn't just start for a team
after being in New England, traded to Indianapolis, and start a game. So, yes, it can be done, but which team will take that chance and say, you know something, it's about the best players, it's not about anything else. and then I believe Cap will be signed. But it will take another injury or two to the right team because Cap can't go anywhere. We can't say, okay, he can just go to any team and play. All right? He's a certain player that it has to be a coach in an organization that will support his ability and how he's going to play.
There was something else interesting that happened right before you talked with Cap. That was the NFL Players Association. If people don't know how that works, that is the Association of Professional Football Players. They gave out their second Man of the Week award this year. The first one went to J.J. Watt for his hurricane relief, $37 million, I think. This one went to Colin Kaepernick for, he donated, I think, the $900,000 of his $1 million pledge to promote social justice, to help guys who are coming out of jail to get jobs, the different things he's done. And that was noteworthy because the Players Association doesn't do something that's going to anger their members, which are, of course, the players. And so we saw already, it's chapter and verse at this point. We know the two head coaches he's had have talked about how good he is in the locker room. We know the last team he was on awarded him their Man of the Year. We know the NFL Players Association feels it's important enough to keep him in the consciousness. They awarded a player that's not on a roster right now, but still one of their members, with their Man of the Week. And we also know that in a world where Brian Hoyer, Josh McCown, Jacoby Brissett, Scott Tolzien have started games this year, we know he's good enough. So, we know all these things. The fact that the owners don't want to let it happen.
That's it. None of those other people you mentioned are in the business to hire him. It's not on their. That's not what they do. Their job isn't to hire him. It's all about the owners. The owners will decide whether Colin Kaepernick plays or not. Which is why what I'm going to say is, maybe if he is ready to put what happened politically behind him and just play football, and he doesn't want to talk about what happened, then why can't he just say, hey, to the owners, here I am. Everyone wants to interview. I'm ready.
Yeah, there's other players protesting now.
I understand. We're not talking about other players. We're talking about, and those guys are playing. So we're talking about.
So how can the other guys play and he can't protest?
All I'm saying, you can protest, but what I'm saying is, why not just protest all you want? I'm for his protest. I believe in his cause. I appreciate the time and money. No, I don't care. I want him to open his mouth and say, I want to play. I'm in shape.
He told me that.
Me a chance. He told you that because you bumped into him on the street.
He told Sean King that of the New York Daily News as well.
And there are so many people that have tried to get an interview with him and tried to approach his agent. Just, hey, tell us something.
So hold on. No.
You've had months and months and months. I'd love to hear you say, I want to play football.
An NFL team won't call him and interview him and give him a tryout. But you want him to go out to the national media and to what? To apply for a job?
A question that everyone's been
The owners already have decided they've already colluded not to sign him.
There's a reason why they colluded not to sign him, or if they colluded, reportedly. I don't know if they did or not.
Look at these bums playing.
Okay. So then put yourself out there. Maybe swallow a little bit of pride and say, hey, guys, I want to play. I'm ready. So now if you don't call me.
People keep changing why he's not employed. Right. It was, we got to wait for free agency. Then it was, we got to wait for the draft. Then it was, we got to wait for training camps. Then it's, we got to wait for injuries. And now it's, he won't talk. I've
said that from the beginning.
If it were, okay, maybe that's what you've been saying from the beginning. It is, if getting a job in the National Football League was as simple as doing an interview.
No, Nick. You're breaking it down and you're simplifying it. It's not that. We happen to want to hear from him. I think if he had just put himself out there and say, hey, this is my call, and I get it, CC.
You know what every other player is putting out there? They put their stats out there. Every other player is putting their stats out there. So then put your will and your desire to want to play and you'll get your stats. He told me he wants to play. He can't get an interview. He can't get an interview, Jenna.
All right.
No one will try him out. They try out players 5 days a week.
The last 7 months.
Oh, he's not hidden. He's not hidden from the NFL owners.
The Giants take on the Lions tonight, and all eyes are on Odell Beckham Jr.'s ankle. OBJ has said it's a 6 to 8 week injury, and he hurt the ankle exactly 4 weeks ago today. He's questionable tonight against Detroit. CC. We ask this again. We continue to ask it. Do the Giants have a chance if Odell sits? Because I think it looks like now you were in touch with him that it's bothering him a little bit.
I mean, they're a different football team. And we got a couple of things at play. He has practiced for several days. But the thing with the high ankle sprain is that the ankle and the Achilles and the calf get very, very sore because you're trying to compensate for the ankle, so you get soreness in these other areas. He's trying to work through the soreness. He would love to play. It is truly a game time decision, and he's been released to practice, but the Giants medical staff has not released him to play in the game yet. So we'll find out tonight if the Giants are going to release him. I think that they are going to release him, but this is a very difficult injury, and given Odell's mindset, I'm still afraid. I'm right back to where I was week number 1. I know he's not healthy, but I think he's going to force himself out there through the training staff, through the workout, telling him he's not in as much pain as he is, and he's going to force himself onto the field tonight.
He's got to play. I mean, for the Giants to have a chance, he's got to play. Detroit, I do not think is a great team, but they can score some points. And we saw that the Giants have a total inability to score points, and we saw that they couldn't score points. Again, I think this part of the season, competition really matters. What you did and against whom you did it matters a lot to me. Dallas held the Giants' offense to 3 points. Dallas then let Trevor Siemian march up and down the field. So it's not like, oh, well, they were just playing a greatly improved Dallas defense. No, it looks like that was what happened in the Giants-Cowboys game, was that the Giants just had no offense. They need Odell Beckham out there, even if he's not 100%. I know that from what you've told me, he wants to play. If he doesn't play because the team holds him out, man, this team knows. All right, hold up. Coming up next, if you look at the schedule, after this week, we've got at Philly, at Tampa Bay. Those are not easy football games. They need the best wide receiver in football out there. And so I don't think the Giants can win this game without him. I think he's one of the only, if not the only, wide receiver in the league where I'd say that, where if he's out, his team's drawing dead. But it speaks to how talented he is and how bereft of talent the rest of that offense is.
When you talk about having him out there, it's not just having him out there for the workload, because at most is he's maybe 75% at most. So could he do more for the Giants? I don't love the word decoy, but he could do more for the Giants with his presence alone than if he wasn't in the lineup at all.
No, that's a great word choice. Way better than get jiggy.
Oh, right. Guess what? The jiggy thing has been retired officially. I will never say it
The
again.
thing with Odell, if he's on the field, they're double teaming him immediately.
Right.
Even at 75% or whatever he is.
They don't know. They don't know. What they're going to think is, if he's on the field, he's healthy.
Okay.
That's how opposing defenses treat a player. If he's out here, we're going to tackle him, and he's supposed to be healthy. So he can draw the double team, which takes one guy out of the box so you can run the ball. The Giants need to run the football, all right, and get Brandon Marshall involved. So Odell tilts the numbers in the Giants' favor, but you still have to make plays. They have to make a conscious effort to run the ball. And Brandon's got to be a huge contributor in the passing game.
To speak to your question, Jenna, since Odell came into the league, I'm not talking about passes thrown to Odell, just Eli Manning passing to anybody. With Odell on the field, he has a passer rating of 91, 5 touchdowns for every 1 interception. With Odell off the field, either because of suspension, injury, his rookie season, injury this season, he has a touchdown-interception ratio of less than 1-to-1, so more interceptions than touchdowns, and he has a quarterback rating of 75. He's just a different player when Odell's on the field, not on the field. We saw that in the final season before Odell got to New York, when Eli had 18 touchdowns, 27 picks. Obviously, a lot of those numbers are because Odell's the one catching the ball, but it's also because the other wide receivers and the tight ends have a clearer path because the defense is skewed so heavily to his side. When you add to that the fact that they don't yet have an established running game, that their left tackle, Eric Flowers, does not yet look to be an NFL caliber player, you need a guy out there that you can throw a quick slant to it and go get you 60 yards. That's how they beat the Lions last year. The defense choked them out, kept it close. Odell made the game-winning play. That's the path to victory for the Giants tonight. And I don't see a path to victory, barring a Matt Stafford meltdown on national television, for the Giants tonight if Odell doesn't play.
Yes or no? Do you want him to play where he is now?
I want to watch him play.
Okay.
I want to watch him play.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review, tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern on FS1. For Cris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolfe. So long, everybody.